So the point of Law Edition, to pick it back on what I was saying, one question I get asked, why you document everything? Man, like the Avatar movie, right? Yeah, one question I get asked is, why you documenting everything? The answer is simple, man. Because documentation creates history. You know, every photographer, or every interview, or every photograph, or editorial production, and every email, everything that goes into our portfolio, personally, executively, exclusively, and publicly, for our own endurance of bettering ourselves and our creative arts. I'm real sensitive about my shit, like Erykah Badu say. Every photograph, every interview, every editorial production, every email, every publication, every interview, every model release form, every contract, every email, and every creative decision becomes part of that primary document record. As an independent publisher, indigenously and autonomously, I learned that protecting your work begins long before you ever published. I knew that. Going to Columbia College, of course, they trained me for it and stuff, you know. And I did. I applied everything I know, copyright, trademark, or something. But now, things get a little bit questionable. This private editorial test shoot session is more than a photo shoot. It's a part of my creative development process, I might say. From the first conversation to the final published image, which I'm still in the process of going through and retouching, I approach each project as both a photographer and an independent journalist. My responsibility is to document the process accurate, respectfully, legally, and professionally in my existence. There was a cut behind the scene footage. I wanted to show you a lot of footage behind the scene in this process that involves Level Up magazine infringement and how I found out multiple was trying to use that, making money off of the process when I was using it, even though you don't post a start at LLC when someone has a trademark. That's one thing. First, before you even start a business, you should always do a research and see who owns the trademark. Level Up magazine exists to preserve stories, especially my people here in Chicago. You know, I cover some, go to levelupmagazine.com and read the exclusive. Because when I invite someone into the publisher private editorial environment, that's not simply posing as a photo, but they, contribute and collaborating on editorial narratives that become part of an archival record. And I approach it as them being the main character now in their own movie. Now, I mature and grew up with this process to the point where I'm going to make editorial movies now. After the collection process and going through this process, it proceeds. And over the years, my creative work, my own experience involved in creative work at the level, with Level Up magazine brand, which I came up with 2007 and published in 2008. Over the years, took it international, led me to study intellectual property, documentation, and legal frameworks that protects original work. But there is a bias in that interference of your work, you guys. You must know this. Those experiences reinforce something important. Creators should understand how to document their work, preserve evidence of their creative process, and learn the basic trademark, copyright, and contract and professional record keeping. That's why documentation builds into everything I do now. Why the point of law edition? If you look up the term point of law in legal sense and express that in court, you'll see why. That experience inspires a special editorial native they call the point of law. The point of law isn't a courtroom, per se. It's about deciding legal outcomes in the process of facts. It's an editorial platform for this particular issue, expressing my creative work as a creator, publisher, and making people look good. Exploring how law, creativity, and publishing and entrepreneurship interact and intercept with one another. My whole goal was to bring us together and make some dopeness. Let's create dopeness. Simple. But you would think. And entrepreneurs interact in engagement and readership and examine public records, statutes, state statutes, constitutional principles, state constitutional principles, court decisions, and the responsibility that outcomes with creating your original work. Teaching the next generation is important for this, especially. The long-term vision is to help the next generation of creators, which I was doing with my internship program. See the testimonies. Go to YouTube. Hear some back the old intern program, how I was running that overseas and here in that process. Understanding that building a creative career isn't only about making great photos and music films or businesses decisions. In that process, I was teaching alternative school on the west side too. A whole group of 300 of them. And a lot of them said they couldn't read and been made fun of about a lot of teachers that I was questionable that didn't look like me. Wanted to teach these kids, but only receiving a check and housing. Ooh. This is also about protecting what you create, understanding your rights, maintaining organized records, and register your intellectual property accordingly, and property, and when it's more than just a title. Communicating professionally and archiving professionally. Building relationships, that's what I loved about it. Meeting people, meeting you guys, the creators from all different backgrounds. Man, I had some blast. But things got very questionable on certain intents of individuals. When you reach out and really tell them that you are the owner. Indigenously, you have to stand firm. I have to stand in that relationship and the integrity, property. Those lessons are just more valuable in learning about how to use just a camera. Today production, so today as I photographed these new image and work in the city of dreams and was called Becoming. We're also documenting the editorial process itself, independently, indigenous, and privately. Exclusively now, I have to move a certain different ways. Because the idea was to create a co-op for the next generation to run it, not to sabotage it. You'll see stories development, creative directions, lighting, wardrobe decisions, conversations, and bringing the stories out of their own individuality. I told you the approach was to treat everyone as the main character in their own movie. With the new technology and innovation process, I want to have fun and explore and show the world what I can do as a creator and what we can do together as a creator with these tools. And the ultimate finished editorial you will see soon, because I believe transparency is the creative process, helps others learn what professional editorial production looks like. Not dogs. But in law, I know how to incorporate that and make it look high-end fashion, of course. With simple tools. It's not about the equipment that you have. It's about the man behind the camera. Level Up magazine has always been about more than publishing images. It's been about preserving stories, build archives, creative opportunities, and sharing knowledge, and supporting organic, indigenous, especially, I'm proud, art. If this publication, and publishing Level Up magazines, bring inspiration on my journey, learn from it, grow from it, support it, understand, no one should never feel that way about their work. In this production inspires young ones as photographers or writers and one filmmakers and entrepreneurs and one future publisher to take their work seriously in protecting what they create, then it's already served as its purpose. Then I can dive deeper shammatically. What the point of law represents for me is not just looking back at my own journey, but helping others move forward with great knowledge and confidence. Ashe. Mr. Trax, now known as Aha, Ahua, El Bay.